Gentleman, yes, Senator Feeney.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to speak on the matter pending before us, this conference committee report. It is tough to add to what we just heard from two of our colleagues, but I want to especially thank them. First, the gentlelady who just took her seat, Senator Miranda, who I've had the honor of working with over the last couple of years on this particular piece of legislation when she was in the House and then now as a member of the Senate. And to be able to partner with her, to be able to listen to her frame of reference and the people that their voices that she ably lifts up so many times. I want to thank her in particular for partnering with me on a piece of this bill. And a big shout out, Madam President, to the gentlelady from Somerville who spoke, who chaired this conference committee, but most importantly, who has championed this day in and day out. You know, important work gets done when we meet together at the conference table and we have discussions with our colleagues in conference. But really the work that is so needed that we all know happens without spotlight, without fanfare, happens on a daily basis, and that is making sure that we're including everybody's voices. And the gentlelady from Somerville has expertly done that once again. She has led with compassion, she has led with grace. Even when the process gets sticky, she made sure to persist through that adversity. Because of the gentlelady from Somerville's work on our conference committee and prior to engrossment here in the Senate, we arrive at this day. Madam President, I also want to thank so much the Chair of Ways and Means, as well as our Senate President, Senator Spilka, President Spilka, who, as we know, and it's been mentioned already here today, has been a champion of pay equity. As we, with this bill and this enactment and this acceptance of the conference committee report today, we're building off of that success of pay equity, where we took a step forward, a giant leap forward when that bill was passed here in Massachusetts. But we knew that there was more to do. And again, there'll be more to do in the future as well. But as we take these steps forward, it is so important to actually helping people throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Madam President. I also want to thank, and she has been thanked and recognized, but when I got into this issue just a few years back, she is somebody that mentored me through not only this bill, but has given me great advice in life and in the legislature, and she's been such a champion for her entire lifetime, and that's former Lieutenant Governor Evelyn Murphy, who's been a great, great friend. So I want to thank Governor Murphy for all that she's done. This would not happen without her. This would not happen without her. I can say that unequivocally. And to her partners as well, and I mentioned them all during engrossment when we took this bill up here in the Senate, Megan Driscoll, the Legislative Women's Caucus that identified this as a priority and made sure that they were doing everything that they could to get this to the floor and to get this through conference. The Massachusetts Black and Latino Legislative Caucus, who did the same, who made sure that they were talking about this bill everywhere and every opportunity that they could. AIM, President and CEO Brooke Thompson, who's been an incredible ally as we tried to get the language right on this in representing the members of AIM, but at the same time understanding how important this was. She's been a great champion as well. To the AFL-CIO and President Chrissy Lynch, who really took the bull by the horns and said, whatever we can do to partner with all the other stakeholders to get this done, we want to do that. So to President Lynch, thank you as well. And the list goes on and on and on. To Beckman, the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts, Boston Foundation. I see Sam Chambers, my good friend here from the Boston Foundation as well, the Greater Boston Chamber, and Jim Rooney, who I know has had discussions recently, Mass Municipal Association. The list just goes on and on and on and on, and these people should not be, should be left out because I'm telling you, they are owed a lot of gratitude from at least from those of us that are working on this bill, and I think all of us here in the legislature, Madam President. We know that posting salary ranges not only empowers workers, it actually helps employers to recruit and to retain staff in competitive times. And in Massachusetts, when we talk about competitiveness, we need to understand that collaboration means that we come together with our business community to figure out ways to do that. Again, it empowers workers, it empowers people when they're looking for jobs, it empowers workers when they're at jobs, and it helps support the recruiting and retaining efforts of our businesses. This language, Madam President, that we talked about kind of two bills coming together, and the piece that I have been working with my colleague from Boston on will help identify gender and racial wage gaps by industry across demographics across each sector of our economy and shed a light on any of those key workplace demographics and wage inequities. And the simple act, Madam President, of data collection itself, we think can start to prompt change in workplaces on its own. As a matter of fact, it already has. We've seen where businesses have come together around the discussions of this bill and have actually implemented changes and started to look at the data within their own organizations to make those changes. Ending wage gaps, though, requires transparency, which is why this was aptly named the Wage Transparency Act. This collaborative bill does that in two ways. As I mentioned, on the front end, through required salary range postings and job descriptions, an issue championed by my colleague in the Senate, Chair Jalen, and combined into this bill with another piece that on the back end, through this demographic data transparency mechanism, will again begin to measure the problem. And as was said earlier and as said many, many times during this debate on this bill, we cannot change that which we do not measure. This data piece is important. It's important. It's important because we can get a real understanding that although pay equity has been put in statute for many years, there's a very big difference from pay equity through wage discrepancies and, quite frankly, a power gap in the workplace. This isn't a magic wand, but it's a step in the right direction to address that. Taken together, Madam President, these reforms represent a historic and nation-leading strategy to tackle wage and gender gaps in the workplace. To tackle these wage, gender, and racial work gaps in the workplace, Madam President, think about that. Think about how in Massachusetts today, this is nation-leading legislation. It shouldn't be. Shouldn't be. This should be a matter, of course, for legislatures across the United States of America when we keep seeing these wage gaps increase year after year. But at least here today in Massachusetts, we're leading. And I am so, so proud of us for doing that and for taking this step. As I mentioned, even after decades of equal pay statutes, these wage gaps continue to exist and are extreme in many, many cases. They contribute to deep losses in lifetime wealth and the daily standard of living. They take away growth opportunities. They take away wealth-building opportunities for families. We know that these gaps, Madam President, unfortunately are worse along gender and racial lines. And they contribute greatly to overall income inequality in this country, which must be addressed in every single way. If we measure that wage gap, if we use the data that we collect as a part of this legislation here in the Commonwealth, and we understand truly the driving forces behind it, analyze it across sectors, across demographics, then we can make informed change. Imagine doing that. Imagine seeing clearly what we know is true and what we hear anecdotally is true, but to actually have that data to show. And it's not all bad actors, and it doesn't happen. Oftentimes, it's not intentional. But we need to be able to see and understand the root causes of that inequity so that we can change it. You know who else agrees with that? Our business community. We are incredibly blessed here in Massachusetts that we have intelligent, compassionate, forward-thinking leaders in our business community here throughout the Commonwealth. That doesn't happen throughout the country everywhere else. But here they've come together, not all, but most have come together, and their organizations have come together to join with us, to work collaboratively with the Senate, to work collaboratively with the House, to work collaboratively with stakeholders and advocates, to work collaboratively with labor. How many times do you hear our national leaders or places across the country say that we brought labor and business together to work for a common good? You don't see that all the time. You don't see that all the time. You put your jersey on, you get in your corner, they get in their corner, and you fight. And somehow, we've gotten to this point where we don't think that we can come together and collaborate. This shows, this conference committee report, this bill, this legislation shows not only how important the product is, but that if you respect the process with workers and advocates and stakeholders and senators and representatives and elected officials and regulators and the business community come together, we have a lot of smart people out there, a lot smarter than I am, that can figure out how to get this right so that we can address wage inequities for women and for people of color here in Massachusetts. This should be a model going forward across this country. It should be a model. Not every side got everything that they wanted. It's been a negotiation. It's been a collaboration, again, expertly led by the chair of our conference committee, the gentlelady from Somerville. But it wouldn't happen unless people come together and understand that in Massachusetts, workers are worth something. Women, people of color, need to be empowered in the workplace. That every worker is worth something here in Massachusetts. And again, I cannot overstate this, how important it was for the business community to come together and work with us as allies, as partners, collaboratively to get this done. I've said before, this is not a magic wand, but it's a down payment on making our workplaces here in Massachusetts more equitable. Madam President, as I said, this builds off of the pay equity law championed by our Senate President, Senator Spilka. Year after year in this chamber, we try and address and triage the most emergent issues for people throughout Massachusetts. And we try and get it right. Over and over and over again, we try and get it right. We try and make sure that we're leading with our heart, that we are lifting up the people of our district. We get it right here. We're doing it right in this bill. And I know it's not the flashiest issue, and there's so much more that we're going to be dealing with over the next 6 days now that it's going to make the headlines in the newspapers and on the news. So maybe this doesn't get the coverage that some of those issues get. But I think we can all find solace as a body, as a Senate, as a House, as a legislature in Massachusetts, working closely again in collaboration with labor and with the business community and stakeholders and people who fight for justice every single day, that we came together and got it right. And we got it right. It may take some time. I get questions all the time, why does it take so long to get these things done? But I can defend that. I can defend that easily by looking at what this process was. The product is important, but I think the process tells a story, that everybody had their voice heard. Everybody had their piece of this. Everybody had the opportunity to make changes, to bring others that they represent, their voices to the table, and that has led us to this conference committee report. Madam President, this has been quite a process since we started filing these bills. Again, the gentlelady from Somerville mentioned our former colleague from the House, Representative Cutler, who has now moved to another job. He was a driving force behind this for many, many years as well. And like I said, it wasn't always easy, but we always respected where everybody stood on the process. And even though we argued about the details and we understood how important those details were, we never questioned the credibility of those that were fighting to make a difference for workers, for women, for people of color. Women, people of color here in Massachusetts should not have to fight for pay equity. They should not have to fight for power and respect. They should not have to fight for access to higher paid jobs, including in the C-suite. Business agrees with us. Stakeholders agree with us. Legislators came together with them leading the way to get this done, Madam President. I am so, so proud of the work that's been done and what's included in this conference committee report. I hope it is adopted, and I hope that all of us can take the message from this bill, not only the product, but the process, and go back out to our districts throughout the next few months and talk about how in Massachusetts, it may take some time, but we work to get it right. We get it right here. Thank you, Madam President.